Silence can be terrifying. Not the silence of an empty room, not the silence of a quiet forest. The silence that settles over a place where something terrible has already happened. On the morning of November 18th, 1987, a sheriff's deputy drove down a narrow road in rural southern Illinois toward a small mobile home. Nothing looked unusual. A pickup truck was parked outside. The curtains were drawn. The yard was still. It looked like the family inside might still be asleep. No broken windows, no signs of forced entry, no neighbors standing outside in panic. Just another quiet morning in a place where everyone knew everyone. But behind that closed door, an entire family was gone. When investigators stepped inside, they found one of the most disturbing crime scenes of their careers. Not because of what they saw alone, but because of what they couldn't understand. There was no obvious motive, very little evidence, no witnesses, no clear suspect. And decades later, the same question still echoes through this case. Who would erase an entire family and leave almost nothing behind? This is the true story of the Dardeen family, one of America's most haunting, unsolved murder investigations. Keith Dardeen was 29 years old. His wife, Elaine, was 30. They lived in a quiet mobile home near the tiny community of Ina, Illinois. It was the kind of place where traffic was rare. Neighbors waved when they passed each other, and most people believed violent crime happened somewhere else. Keith worked at a water treatment plant. His co-workers described him as dependable and quiet. Elaine worked part-time and spent most of her time caring for their 3-year-old son, Peter. She was also expecting their second child. To everyone around them, they looked like an ordinary young family preparing for a new chapter. But life inside the Dardeen home was changing. Not because anything was wrong between them, because they were planning to move. Keith had recently accepted a new job in another town. The family hoped the move would give them a better future. They had even begun talking about selling the mobile home. Boxes were slowly being packed. Plans were being made. The future seemed clear. Then, everything stopped. On November 17th, Keith never showed up for work. At first, nobody panicked. People miss work. Cars break down. Children get sick. But as the hours passed, concern began to grow. Keith had never been the type to disappear without telling someone. When co-workers couldn't reach him, they contacted local authorities. Deputies decided to perform a welfare check. They expected to find a simple explanation. Maybe the family had left early. Maybe someone was ill. Maybe there had been a misunderstanding. Instead, they found a mystery that would haunt investigators for decades. Inside the mobile home, everything looked strangely ordinary. Furniture remained in place. Personal belongings were untouched. There was no sign that someone had searched the house looking for valuables. Nothing suggested a robbery. Yet the home carried an overwhelming sense that life had ended suddenly. Investigators quickly realized this wasn't a burglary. It wasn't a random act of vandalism. Someone had entered that home, or had been invited inside. And whatever happened next had unfolded without anyone nearby realizing it. Then they noticed something even stranger. Keith wasn't there. His wife and son had been found inside the home, but Keith had vanished. For a moment, investigators considered a possibility. Could he have survived? Had he fled? Was he somehow responsible? Those questions didn't last long. Later that same day, several miles away, people discovered Keith's car abandoned in a wheat field. The vehicle itself raised even more questions. Nothing valuable had been taken. There was no clear explanation for why it had been left there. Nearby, they found Keith. He had been killed. Now investigators knew they were dealing with something even darker. This wasn't one crime scene. It was two. Someone had taken Keith away from his home, or intercepted him after he left. But why separate him from the rest of the family? Why move him miles away? Was he the intended target? Or was the entire family always part of the plan? Those questions became the center of the investigation. Detectives reconstructed Keith's final known movements. The previous evening, he had spoken with coworkers about the upcoming move. Nothing seemed unusual. No arguments, no threats, no fear. Friends described him as optimistic. He was looking forward to starting over. Nobody remembered him mentioning enemies. Nobody believed he was involved in anything dangerous. The more detectives learned about the Dardeens, the stranger the case became. Financial records showed no major debts. There was no evidence of organized crime, no known connections to drugs, no obvious family disputes. It was as if investigators had been handed the perfect family and then asked to explain the unexplainable. Rumors spread quickly through southern Illinois. Some believed it had been committed by someone the family knew. Others believed a stranger had chosen them at random. The idea that frightened the community most was the last one, because if there was no reason, then anyone could have been next. Parents stopped letting children play outside alone. People began locking doors that had always been left unlocked. Neighbors looked twice at unfamiliar vehicles driving slowly through town. Fear had settled over Ina. Not because people knew who had done it, but because they didn't.
The investigation quickly expanded beyond the small town of Ina. Detectives from the Illinois State Police joined the case, bringing in forensic specialists and experienced homicide investigators. They searched every inch of the mobile home, Keith's abandoned car, and the surrounding roads. Every fingerprint was collected, every tire track was photographed, every possible witness was interviewed. Yet the more evidence they gathered, the less the crime seemed to make sense. The Dardeens had not been wealthy. Nothing valuable had been stolen. There was no sign of a robbery, no missing jewelry, no emptied bank accounts, no indication that someone had entered the home looking for money. If robbery was not the motive, what was? Investigators then focused on the people closest to the family: friends, neighbors, co-workers, relatives. They searched for arguments, jealousy, financial problems, or hidden relationships. But interview after interview led nowhere. Everyone described Keith and Elaine in almost exactly the same way. Quiet, kind, responsible, private but friendly. The kind of family that rarely attracted attention. If someone had wanted revenge, nobody could explain why. Detectives reconstructed the family's final known hours. On the evening before the murders, Keith had been preparing for work the next morning. The family had discussed their upcoming move. Elaine had been looking forward to raising their new baby in a different town. Nothing suggested they believed they were in danger. Nothing suggested they expected visitors that night. Then investigators noticed something unusual. There were no obvious signs of forced entry. The doors showed no major damage. The windows were intact. That detail changed the direction of the investigation. Perhaps the killer had knocked on the door. Perhaps Keith had opened it willingly. Maybe he recognized the person standing outside. Or maybe the killer had simply found another way inside. Without witnesses, every possibility remained open. The small town soon became overwhelmed with rumors. Some people believed the murders had been committed by someone passing through the area. Interstate 57 was not far away. Travelers, truck drivers, and strangers moved through southern Illinois every day. Could someone have stopped at random, chosen the first isolated home they saw, and then disappeared forever? Others rejected that idea. The crime seemed too deliberate, too organized. Whoever committed it appeared to know exactly how to avoid leaving behind useful evidence. That suggested planning, not chance. Weeks passed, then months. The headlines faded, but the investigation did not stop. Detectives followed every lead, no matter how unlikely. Psychics contacted the police, claiming they knew where the killer was hiding. Anonymous letters arrived with strange accusations. Telephone calls came in at all hours from people convinced they had solved the mystery. Most of the tips led nowhere. Then, about a year later, investigators thought they might finally have their answer. A man named Tommy Lynn Sells had begun attracting attention in several violent crimes across the country. Years later, after he became known as one of America's most notorious serial killers, some investigators wondered whether he could have been responsible for the Dardeen murders. Sells himself would eventually claim responsibility for many murders. Among them, he also claimed the Dardeen case. For a brief moment, it seemed the mystery might finally be over. But the confession quickly raised new questions. His timeline contained inconsistencies. Some details did not match the known evidence. Other information appeared to come from newspaper reports rather than first-hand knowledge. Experienced investigators have seen false confessions before. Some killers seek attention. Some want to appear more dangerous than they really are. Some insert themselves into famous cases simply because they can. After carefully reviewing everything, authorities concluded there was not enough evidence to officially link Tommy Lynn Sells to the murders. The case remained unsolved. Years turned into decades. Technology improved. DNA testing became far more advanced than anything available in 1987. Old evidence was re-examined. Items collected from the crime scenes were tested again using modern forensic methods. Investigators hoped science might finally reveal what interviews and eyewitnesses never could. But even modern technology failed to provide the answer everyone had been waiting for. No definitive suspect emerged. No arrest was made. No courtroom ever heard the full story of what happened inside that quiet mobile home. Today, more than 3 decades later, the murders of the Dardeen family remain one of Illinois' most disturbing unsolved cases. The mobile home is gone. The family is gone. Many of the investigators who first worked the case have retired. Some have passed away. But the questions remain exactly where they were on that cold November morning.
Who came to that house? Why that family? Why was Keith separated from the others? Was it personal? Was it random? Or was there a motive that disappeared forever with the killer? Perhaps the most unsettling part of the entire case is how ordinary everything seemed before it happened. No threatening phone calls, no dramatic confrontation, no warning. Just a young family making plans for a better future, packing boxes, preparing for a new job, waiting for the birth of another child, doing the same ordinary things millions of families do every single day. Then, within a matter of hours, their future simply ended. Cases like this remind us that the most frightening crimes are rarely the ones we expect. There was no abandoned mansion, no haunted forest, no supernatural legend. Just an ordinary home at the end of a quiet road. A place where the lights went out one night and never truly came back. Even today, investigators continue to accept new information. Someone, somewhere, may still know what happened. Someone may remember seeing an unfamiliar vehicle on that lonely road. Someone may have heard a confession that was never reported. Someone may have dismissed a small detail that could finally connect the pieces of this mystery. Until that day comes, the Dardeen family remains more than just another cold case. It remains a reminder that sometimes the most terrifying mysteries are not the ones with impossible answers. They are the ones where the answer exists, but the only person who knows it has never spoken. And perhaps tonight, before you lock your front door, before you turn off the lights, before you tell yourself that ordinary places are always safe, remember this family. Because on the evening before their lives were taken, nothing looked unusual. Nothing felt wrong. The house was quiet. The road was empty. The future seemed certain. And sometimes, that is exactly how the darkest stories begin.